Grace Holloway had always imagined betrayal would come quietly, through late-night texts, faint perfume on a collar, or canceled dinners that felt too rehearsed. She never expected it to walk straight through the front door of their Seattle home, on a Wednesday afternoon, while she was 7 months pregnant. The moment she heard unfamiliar laughter echo through the hallway, she froze at the top of the staircase. Her hand instinctively covered her stomach, as if shielding her unborn child from something poisonous. From her vantage point, she saw Logan Mercer, her husband, push the door open with his foot while holding a bag of takeout, smiling in a way he hadn't smiled at her in months. But that wasn't the part that stole the air from her lungs. Trailing behind him, wearing a fitted cream coat and bright confidence, was Harper Voss, the woman Grace had met twice at Logan's company events. Harper walked in as if she owned the place, her heels clicking across the hardwood floor like a declaration. Grace gripped the handrail to steady herself. She wanted to believe it was a misunderstanding, but the way Harper's hand skimmed Logan's back told her otherwise. It was intimate, it was practiced, and it was deliberate. Logan didn't even flinch when he finally saw Grace standing there. Instead, he sighed, annoyed, almost put out, like she was interrupting something he felt entitled to. "Grace," he said casually, "you're home early." Home early. She worked from home. She was on bed rest. Where did he think she'd be? Her pulse hammered. Her baby shifted within her, sensing her distress. Harper lifted a brow and smiled, not apologetic, not awkward, but smug, as if she'd already replaced Grace in all the places that mattered. That was the moment Grace realized two things. Her marriage had just ended, and Logan had absolutely no idea what destruction he'd just invited into his own life. Because Grace wasn't the powerless, abandoned wife he thought she was, and what she would do next would ruin him in ways he never saw coming. Grace Holloway had always been good at pretending things were fine. It was a survival skill she learned long before her marriage. Smile through the cracks, stay quiet through the disappointments, endure what cannot be changed. But as she stood frozen on the staircase, watching Harper Voss glide through her living room like a newly crowned queen, something inside her finally snapped in a way that felt irreversible. This moment didn't come out of nowhere. It was the final thread in a rope that had been fraying for nearly a year. It began with Logan's late nights, each excuse thinner than the last. Investor meeting ran long, he'd say, breezing past her without making eye contact. Then came the unexplained trips, the canceled doctor appointments, the forgotten anniversary, which he brushed off with a dry, "Things are busy right now, Grace." Busy, yes, always busy. Busy chasing status they couldn't afford. Busy pretending to be a man he wasn't. Busy building an image while their marriage crumbled beneath the weight of neglect. The signs were there, painted in neon, but Grace was too exhausted to confront them. Pregnancy had drained her energy. Stress had stolen the rest. She chalked everything up to hormones, to overthinking, telling herself it was temporary. But nothing about today felt temporary. When Logan walked right past her on the stairs, Harper at his heels, Grace's hand instinctively tightened around the railing. She waited, hoping for an apology, an explanation, something human. Instead, Logan said, "We need to talk later. Harper and I have a meeting." A meeting. In her house. Grace felt a hollow laugh rise in her chest but swallowed it. Her baby kicked, reminding her she wasn't alone, reminding her she needed to stay calm. Harper's gaze flicked upward, cold, dictatorious. "Don't worry, Grace," she said lightly. "We won't bother your rest." It was such a small sentence, but it carried the weight of a declaration. You've already been replaced. For the first time in months, Grace didn't retreat. She didn't hide her trembling. She didn't force a smile. She simply stared back, her silence sharper than any scream. Because beneath that silence was a storm neither Logan nor Harper could see coming. And Grace felt something unfamiliar stirring in her chest, the beginning of the end, and the beginning of her power. Harper Voss didn't just enter Grace Holloway's home. She claimed it. Every movement, every flick of her glossy hair, every step of her pointed heels across the hardwood floor carried a message Grace couldn't ignore. I belong here more than you do. Harper walked straight toward the marble kitchen island, running her fingertips across the cool surface, as if inspecting a property she planned to buy. She set her designer purse down, right on top of Grace's folded prenatal vitamins, without a hint of hesitation. "Logan, the natural light in here is perfect," Harper said brightly. Once we redecorate, this place could look like something out of Architectural Digest. Grace blinked. Redecorate? She hadn't even processed the audacity before Harper continued, gesturing around the room like a realtor mid-tour. I'm thinking we remove that wall, open the space, add a wine fridge here. She turned and flashed a dazzling smile. What do you think, Grace? Oh, sorry. I guess you're used to things looking traditional. Grace's pulse stuttered. It wasn't the insult that hit her hardest. Pregnancy had softened her defensiveness months ago. It was the realization that Harper wasn't acting like a lover sneaking in behind a wife's back. She was acting like a successor. Logan didn't help. He chuckled under his breath, sliding his arm around Harper's waist as if they'd rehearsed this moment, as if humiliating Grace was a natural part of his day. You'll get used to it, Logan said to Harper. The place needs a modern touch anyway. Grace steadied her breath, reminding herself her baby needed calm, not collapse. But the room kept shrinking. The betrayal felt bigger than the walls could contain. When Harper strutted toward the living room, she noticed a framed sonogram sitting on the console table. A picture Grace kept there as a reminder of hope. Harper picked it up. Oh, cute, she said blandly. Anyway, Logan, where should we put the new bar cart? The one from West Elm? You said we were ordering it this week. Grace felt something cold slide through her bloodstream. Harper wasn't just playing house. She was preparing to replace her entirely, piece by piece, room by room, life by life. But what neither Harper nor Logan realized was that they were standing in a house Grace legally controlled. A house built on assets she, not Logan, managed. Harper thought she was stepping into her new future. She had no idea she was walking straight into her own downfall. Grace Holloway had survived many kinds of pain, financial instability in her childhood, miscarried friendships, endless pressure at work, but nothing compared to the raw, wordless devastation spreading through her chest as she watched Logan and Harper move freely around her home, treating it like a stage built solely for their performance. And yet, Grace said nothing. Her silence wasn't weakness, it was the frightening stillness before an earthquake. Logan finally turned toward her, rubbing the back of his neck with the same dismissive gesture he used whenever he wanted to avoid accountability. Grace, can you not start anything right now? Harper and I have a presentation to plan. Plan? In her house? While she was standing there holding their unborn child? Grace inhaled slowly, pressing her hand to her belly to calm the tightening pressure beneath her ribs. The baby kicked again, unsettled, sensing her rising stress. Harper noticed. Instead of softening, she smirked. Oh, be careful, Harper said sweetly. Stress isn't good for pregnancy. Maybe you should lie down. Logan and I can finish things here. Grace's vision blurred, not with tears, she was beyond tears, but with a cold clarity she hadn't felt in years. She realized, with brutal certainty, that neither of them saw her as a person anymore. She was something to be dismissed, an inconvenience standing between them and the life they believed they deserved. Her silence made Harper bolder. You know, Logan, Harper continued, sliding her hand over his arm again, we should really discuss the bedroom layout. I want the space to feel different. Different, as in without Grace. Grace steadied herself against the staircase railing. She was trembling, not from fear, but from the shock of finally understanding the truth. Logan hadn't drifted away. He had deliberately chosen a life where she didn't exist. He had walked her right up to the edge of heartbreak and shoved her over. But what Logan didn't know, what Harper couldn't possibly guess, was that there were lines Grace would never cross, and lines she would never again allow anyone to cross for her. So she didn't scream. She didn't argue. She didn't beg. She simply walked past them, calm, silent, composed. And that terrified Logan more than any anger ever could, because silence from a woman who has finally understood her worth is the first warning of a storm that will take everything. Grace Holloway walked into her home office without a word, shutting the door with a calmness so eerie it made the air outside shift. Logan barely noticed. Harper assumed Grace was going upstairs to cry. But Grace wasn't going to cry. She was going to end this. The office was dim, lit only by the Seattle skyline bleeding through the windows. Her MacBook Pro sat on the glass desk where she left it, still open from reviewing quarterly reports that morning. Now, it felt less like a work device and more like a weapon, one only she knew how to wield. Her fingers trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the adrenaline of clarity. She opened the encrypted dashboard that held every financial thread of their marriage. joint accounts, property titles, stock portfolios, legal documents. She had set it up herself because Logan always claimed he was too busy to handle the logistics. He never realized that meant she held all the power, and tonight she would use it. Grace entered her passcode, flicking through each asset with surprising steadiness. Their house, her house, was technically a joint purchase, but because of Logan's terrible credit and mountain of debt, the mortgage, title, and insurance were all under her name. The savings account? She funded 90% of it. The investment portfolio Logan bragged about? She built it. The only thing Logan owned outright was his misplaced ego. Grace clicked on the trust account, one she had established years ago, quietly, under her own name. With a few precise keystrokes, she transferred every liquid asset from their shared accounts into her trust. The money moved instantly, cleanly, legally. A notification pinged. Logan's phone in the living room vibrated. Grace imagined his face when he saw the alerts. Then she went further. She removed his access, one account at a time, until there was nothing left for him to control, nothing left for him to weaponize. Grace exhaled, feeling her heartbeat slow for the first time since the front door opened. This wasn't revenge. This was protection of her child, her future, and the last remaining pieces of her dignity. When she closed the laptop, she caught her reflection in the black screen. She didn't look broken. She looked awakened. Soon, Logan would discover that the wife he brought to her knees was the same woman who could bring his world crashing down with a single decision. Grace Holloway stepped out of the office with a quiet steadiness that did not match the war she had just waged behind a closed door. Logan and Harper were still in the living room, Harper flipping through design inspiration on her phone, Logan pretending to be busy, but glancing at his notifications with growing confusion. He didn't know yet. He was seconds away from losing everything. Grace didn't say a word as she walked past them, heading upstairs. Her steps were deliberate, almost serene, but inside something was crumbling. Years of effort, patience, love, and blind loyalty collapsing like a structure that had been unstable for far too long. Upstairs, she packed with shaking hands. Not much, just essentials. A few clothes, prenatal vitamins, her medical file, a small box of baby items she'd been collecting quietly. She paused when she touched the tiny knitted hat she bought last week. Soft, ivory, made for a newborn's fragile head. Her vision blurred for the first time that day, not from sorrow, but from the heartbreak of realizing she had been preparing for a life with a man who had already chosen to build one without her. Her child kicked again, stronger this time. It felt like a nudge, a plea. "We're leaving," she whispered. "I'm not raising you in this." When she zipped the suitcase, the weight of finality filled the room. As she walked downstairs, Logan finally looked up. "What's with the bag?" he asked, still confused, still oblivious. Grace didn't look at him. If she did, she feared her resolve would waver. "I'm leaving for the night," she said simply. Harper raised an eyebrow, leaning into Logan with faux concern. "Are you sure you should travel in your condition?" Grace ignored her. The front door opened, letting in the cool Seattle night air. For a moment, she hesitated, because walking away from a marriage, even a broken one, is not a clean cut. It's a wound you carry. But then she stepped outside. The door closed behind her with a soft click, and in that instant, something inside Grace lifted, like she had finally exhaled after holding her breath for years. Logan had no idea yet, but the woman who walked out that door was no longer the wife he could control. She was the force that would soon dismantle the world he thought he owned. Logan Mercer didn't notice Grace was gone until 20 full minutes had passed. Harper was curled comfortably on the couch beside him, scrolling through furniture catalogs as if she were already designing her future. Logan's phone kept buzzing with unfamiliar notifications, but he ignored them at first, thinking they were just promotional alerts. Then one ping cut through the noise, a bank notification, then another, then 5 more. His brows pulled together. He opened the first message. Accounts access removed. Transfer completed. Authorized by Grace Holloway. His stomach dropped. He clicked the next alert. Joint savings. $0.00. Investment portfolio. Ownership updated. Property rights. Revised. A cold sweat broke across the back of his neck. No, what the hell is this? He muttered, sitting upright. Harper glanced over lazily. What's wrong? Logan didn't answer. He bolted up from the couch and grabbed his laptop from the dining table. His hands shook as he typed in his password. Within seconds, his worst fear materialized across the screen. Grace hadn't just left the house. She had taken everything. All the accounts, locked. Their home, hers alone. His access, revoked. How did she even... he whispered, breath hitching. Harper frowned. You said she wasn't involved in the finances. She wasn't supposed to be, he snapped. I handled everything. Then it hit him. He never handled everything. He never paid the bills. He never filled out mortgage paperwork. He never learned how their investments worked. Grace did. She had always done it. And he had been too arrogant, too careless, too busy chasing validation to notice the power she quietly held. At that exact moment, Logan's last credit card declined when he tried to update a subscription on his laptop. Harper saw the notification flash on the screen. Are you broke? She asked, her tone shifting from confidence to calculation. Logan swallowed hard, voice cracking. No, this is temporary. Grace wouldn't actually... Harper stood, grabbing her purse. The warmth in her eyes evaporated instantly. I'm not doing temporary, Logan. He reached out, but she stepped back. Call me when your life isn't on fire, she said coldly. The front door slammed behind her. Logan stared at the empty doorway, realizing the truth too late. Grace leaving wasn't the beginning of his problems. It was the start of his collapse. And the woman he betrayed was now the woman who held every card. The Seattle night was cold enough to sting, but Grace Holloway barely felt it. Her breaths were shallow, her steps unsteady as she made her way toward the curb with her suitcase rolling behind her. She didn't know exactly where she was going. She only knew she had to keep moving before her collapsing world crushed what little strength she had left. A passing rideshare slowed when the driver noticed her struggling. "Ma'am, are you okay?" he called out. Grace nodded even though she wasn't okay. Not physically, not emotionally, not in any conceivable way. "Ritz-Carlton, please," she whispered, her voice thin. The moment she sank into the back seat, the adrenaline that kept her upright began fading fast. Her hands shook uncontrollably. Her chest tightened. The baby kicked again, harder, as if begging her to stay conscious. Her vision dimmed. "Ma'am? Hey, stay with me," the driver said, alarmed. Grace tried to respond, but a wave of dizziness washed over her. Panic clawed at her throat. Her body couldn't take this much stress. Not with her high-risk pregnancy. Not tonight. The car pulled up to the glowing entrance of the Ritz-Carlton. Before the driver could help her out, someone else appeared. Someone familiar. Dr. Ethan Cole. He had just stepped out of the hotel after attending a medical conference when he spotted her. His brows shot up in shock. "Grace?" he said, rushing toward her. "What happened? Are you in labor?" "No," she breathed, gripping her abdomen. "Just... stress. I had to leave." Ethan didn't hesitate. He slipped an arm around her waist, supporting her gently but firmly. "Let's get you inside," he said. "You shouldn't be alone right now." Inside the lobby's warm light, Grace finally exhaled. She watched the marble floors blur beneath her feet as exhaustion settled deep in her bones. Ethan guided her to a quiet seating area and crouched in front of her. "Grace, tell me what's going on." She shook her head, tears threatening. "I can't. Not yet. I just need somewhere safe." "You're safe now," Ethan said softly. "I won't let anything happen to you or the baby." For the first time that night, Grace felt something other than fear, relief, warmth, a flicker of hope. She had walked away from her home with nothing but a suitcase. Yet somehow, she had walked straight into the arms of the one person who saw her pain, and didn't look away. Harper Voss had always been good at reading men. She could sense weakness, ambition, insecurity, every vulnerability wrapped beneath tailored suits and fake confidence. That was why Logan Mercer first appealed to her. He wanted more than he could afford, and men like that were easy to manipulate. But as she sat alone in the living room, Grace once curated with quiet elegance, Harper began noticing something unsettling. Logan wasn't pacing. He wasn't shouting. He wasn't scheming. He was unraveling. The man who bragged about his financial genius just last week was now hunched over his laptop, opening and closing the same banking tabs, as if repetition might magically restore the missing money. "Logan," Harper said carefully, "what exactly did she do?" His hands shook. She moved everything. The accounts, the investments, everything is gone." Harper frowned. "Can't you reverse the transfers?" Logan slammed the laptop shut. They were legal. Every damn document is in her name. I thought my credit issues wouldn't matter. Grace always covered it. I didn't know she controlled all of it. A prickle of fear slid down Harper's spine. She had just aligned herself with a man who no longer had the wealth, influence, or protection she expected. "So what now?" she asked. Logan raked a hand through his hair, frantic. I need her to come back. She can fix this. She has to." Harper stared at him. There it was, the truth. Logan didn't want Grace. He wanted her money, her stability, her intelligence. He needed the woman he had just betrayed to rescue him from the consequences of betraying her. "How could you let her handle everything without checking?" Harper hissed. "You're supposed to be the businessman." Logan's face twisted with shame and fury. "Grace was supposed to love me. She wouldn't have done this unless you—" "Don't blame me," Harper snapped. "You brought me into this. You opened the door. You—" She stopped mid-sentence as another notification appeared on Logan's phone. Mortgage payment updated. Primary owner, Grace Holloway. Secondary party removed. Harper felt the blood drain from her face. "Oh my God," she whispered. "She kicked you off the house." Logan froze. For the first time, Harper wondered if she had backed the wrong man. Because this didn't look like a temporary setback. This looked like the start of a complete collapse. Grace Holloway had always imagined divorce as something loud, shouting, accusations, slamming doors. Yet as she sat in the quiet comfort of her Ritz-Carlton suite, the reality felt strangely calm, almost peaceful. She wasn't writing a declaration of war. She was writing her way out of one. Her laptop glowed softly in the dim light as she pulled up the document her attorney had prepared months ago, just in case. At the time, she told herself it was a precaution for financial protection. She never believed she'd actually send it. But tonight, it felt like breathing. Every clause she reviewed was a reminder of just how long she had carried the weight of this marriage alone. The accounts she managed, the debts she covered, the home she protected, the baby she was preparing to raise. Logan contributed nothing but chaos. Grace signed the digital form with a steady hand. No hesitation, no trembling, just quiet truth. Then she attached a short note, only one sentence. "I choose our child's safety over your destruction." No anger, no insults, just clarity. When she hit send, a soft chime echoed through the suite. The document shot through cyberspace and landed directly in Logan's inbox. Meanwhile, miles away, Logan sat on the living room floor, surrounded by unpaid bills and the remnants of his collapsing ego. His phone buzzed. He snatched it up, praying it was Grace reconsidering, begging for a conversation. Instead, he opened the message and froze. Divorce petition, filed and signed initiated by Grace Holloway. His throat tightened. No, she wouldn't do this to me. But she had. And unlike before, he couldn't charm, lie, or manipulate his way out. Grace now held every asset, every legal advantage. She had taken back her life, and in doing so, she had taken away the illusion of power Logan had always depended on. Harper, standing by the window, let out a sharp breath. "Well," she said softly, "looks like you're on your own." Logan's jaw trembled. "She's not allowed to leave me like this." Harper shot him a cold, amused look. "Logan, she didn't just leave you. She ended you." Far away in her suite, Grace closed her laptop and rested a hand on her belly. For the first time in forever, she felt safe. Logan Mercer had always believed rock bottom was something that happened to other people. Men who weren't smart enough, ambitious enough, or bold enough to build the life he thought he deserved. But that night, as rain hammered against the windows of the now empty house, he finally understood the truth. Rock bottom wears your name when you carve it yourself. He was sitting on the floor where the living room rug used to be. Grace had taken it when she left, not out of spite, but because it had always belonged to her. Almost everything in the house did. For the first time, the space felt foreign, like he was trespassing in a life that was never really his. He opened the refrigerator, hoping for distraction, but it was nearly empty. Grace handled the groceries too. God, he thought bitterly, what did I actually contribute? His phone buzzed again. He lunged for it, hoping it was Grace reconsidering the divorce. It wasn't. Payment declined. Account overdrawn. Credit limit a suited in his phone. A muscle twitched in his heart. It's a recognize that I wasn't with Lask. Anything, the first thing he based in very bid. It was credum, but they were flesh, and its lechtra money. It was no payment, but the statement, but the judge buzz. It was no credible, and it was the stores. A muscle twitched in his jaw. He refreshed the banking app again and again, but the numbers didn't change. They wouldn't. Grace had secured everything with a precision that left no cracks, no opportunities for him to reclaim control. Harper re-entered the room, wearing her coat, her purse slung over her shoulder. She avoided looking at him. Pity didn't suit her brand. "I'm heading out," she said curtly. "And Logan? Don't call me. I can't afford to get dragged into whatever this mess is." "This mess?" he snapped. "You were part of it." Her eyes narrowed. "I was part of you when you had something to offer. Now, you're a liability." Harper left without another word, shutting the door on the last person who still cared enough to stay, if only for the wrong reasons. Silence pressed against him from all sides. Logan sank back onto the floor, burying his hands into his hair. Images flashed through his mind. Grace laughing during their early years, Grace carrying the burden of their household alone, Grace standing at the staircase earlier that day with heartbreak in her eyes. He had done that. He had destroyed the only person who ever truly believed in him. And now, she was gone. Her child was gone. The future he stole was gone. Logan finally understood the one truth every fool learns too late. You don't realize someone was your whole foundation until you feel the ground disappear beneath your feet. Grace Holloway woke to the soft hum of the Ritz-Carlton's heating system and the faint ache beneath her ribs, the kind of ache that came from holding in too many emotions for too long. For a moment, she lay still, staring at the ceiling, letting the silence wash over her. It felt unfamiliar. No slammed doors, no clipped arguments, no heavy footsteps pacing with irritation. For the first time in years, the silence didn't feel like punishment. It felt like freedom. She sat up slowly, one hand resting on her swollen belly. The baby shifted gently, as if responding to her steadier heartbeat. "We're okay," she whispered. "We're finally okay." A soft knock sounded at the door. Grace tensed for a second, trauma reflex, but relaxed when she heard a familiar voice. "Grace? It's Ethan." She opened the door to Dr. Ethan Cole, holding a tray with herbal tea and a small box of pastries from the hotel cafe. His expression was gentle, careful, as if he knew she was still standing on fragile ground. "I didn't know what you could keep down," he said, "so I brought options." Grace blinked, touched. "You didn't have to." "I know," he replied, "but you've been surviving alone long enough." He didn't push her to talk. He simply set the tray on the table and opened the curtains, letting in the soft gray light of a Seattle morning. The skyline outside looked different today, less intimidating, more like a canvas waiting for her to redraw her life. Grace poured herself tea, the warmth soothing her trembling hands. "I thought leaving would destroy me," she admitted, "but I feel lighter." "That's what happens," Ethan said softly, "when you stop carrying someone else's damage." She looked at him then, really looked, at the quiet certainty in his eyes, the steadiness she hadn't felt from anyone in years. It unsettled her in a way that felt strangely comforting. A vibration pulled her from the moment. Her phone lit up with notifications, messages from Logan, missed calls, voicemails filled with panic and desperation. Ethan saw her expression darken. "Do you need me to stay?" Grace exhaled slowly. "No, I just need to keep moving forward." Because she wasn't the shattered wife running from heartbreak anymore. She was a mother building a new world, one where her child would never feel the pain she endured. And she wasn't going back. Not now, not ever. Grace Holloway had spent years shrinking herself so Logan could feel taller. Now, in the quiet elegance of her hotel suite, she felt something she hadn't felt in a very long time. Space. Space to breathe. Space to think. Space to finally imagine a future where she wasn't apologizing for her existence. She sat at the small marble table, her laptop open, paperwork neatly spread before her. But this time, she wasn't handling household bills or fixing Logan's financial disasters. She was building something of her own. Her company, Holloway Financial Consulting, had existed only as a quiet dream tucked into her notebook margins and late-night thoughts. Tonight, it became real. She registered the LLC, reviewed domain names, designed the first structure of her services. Numbers had always made sense to her. stable, predictable, unlike the man she once married. A soft knock sounded again. "Grace, it's Ethan." She opened the door, surprised to see him holding a sleek folder. "What's that?" she asked. "A friend at the hospital introduced me to a business advisor," he said. "She looked over your financial history, the parts you shared, and she thinks you're underselling yourself. Grace, you're capable of so much more." Her brows lifted. "Are you helping me start a company?" Ethan smiled, a gentle curve that warmed her chest. "I'm helping you remember who you were before Logan convinced you to be less." Grace swallowed hard, emotion catching her off guard. She had grown used to being needed, not supported, to carrying others, not being carried. "I don't know what to say," she whispered. "You don't have to say anything," Ethan replied. "Just build the life you deserve." They moved to the table, reviewing the documents together. Ethan wasn't intrusive. He didn't take over. He simply sat beside her, pointing out risks, encouraging her through decisions, offering the steady presence she had once begged Logan for. By the end of the hour, Grace stared at the finalized business plan, her business plan, feeling a spark ignite in her chest. Hope. Real, living hope. Her phone buzzed again, Logan's name flashing. She turned it face down without a second thought. "What now?" Ethan asked softly. Grace took a slow breath. "Now," she said. "I rebuild everything he thought he destroyed." And for the first time, she believed she could. Grace Holloway expected many things after walking away from Logan Mercer. Anger, manipulation, desperate apologies, maybe even lawsuits. What she didn't expect was the pounding on her hotel door at nearly midnight. At first, she thought it was room service, but the pounding grew harder, louder, frantic, the kind of knocking that carried panic inside it. Ethan stood immediately, placing himself between Grace and the door. "Stay back," he said quietly. Grace's pulse spiked. She wrapped an arm protectively around her belly. "Who is it?" Ethan called out. A voice cracked through the door, trembling, strained. "It's Harper. Please, please open the door." Ethan's brows shot up. Grace didn't move. Harper Voss, hair disheveled, mascara streaking her cheeks, stumbled inside when Ethan finally cracked the door open. Gone was the polished woman who walked into Grace's house like she owned it. This version looked wrecked, desperate, afraid. "We need to talk," Harper gasped. "Logan, he's not just broke, he's dangerous." Grace stiffened, but Ethan kept his arms subtly in front of her. "Explain," he said firmly. Harper paced the room, hands shaking. "Logan owes money, a lot of money. Not to banks, to people you can't negotiate with." Grace felt the room tilt. "What does that have to do with me?" Harper swallowed hard. "Because he used your name on one of the loans. Fraudulently forged paperwork. They think you owe them too." A chill sliced through Grace's spine. Ethan stepped forward. "Are you saying she's in danger?" "Yes," Harper cried. "I tried to warn him, but he snapped. He's losing everything. His company, his sanity, his grip on reality. He thinks Grace ruined his life on purpose." Grace's breath caught. "I didn't ruin anything. I just protected what was mine." Harper nodded violently. I know. But Logan isn't thinking rationally. He said he's coming for you. Tonight." Ethan's jaw locked. "He won't get anywhere near her." Harper looked at Grace then, really looked, and for the first time, there was no hatred, no smugness, no competition, just regret. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't know who he really was." Grace steadied herself against the back of the chair, heart pounding, baby stirring anxiously beneath her palm. Logan wasn't finished. He was just getting desperate, and desperate men were dangerous. Grace Holloway sank into the nearest chair, her breathing uneven as Harper's words echoed through the suite. Fraud, loans, danger. Each piece twisted reality tighter around her chest. She had prepared herself for betrayal, for heartbreak, even for the collapse of her marriage, but not for criminal fallout. Ethan knelt beside her, steady and calm despite the storm unfolding around them. "Grace, look at me," he said gently. "You're safe. I promise you that." But Grace shook her head. "If what Harper says is true, then Logan didn't just gamble our finances. He gambled our future. He gambled our child." Harper wrung her hands, pacing so fast she nearly tripped. It gets worse. Logan forged more than your signature. He used your employee ID, your corporate information. If this blows up, the authorities might think you're connected. Grace felt the blood drain from her face. Her company was preparing for IPO. A financial scandal, even an accusation, could destroy everything she had worked for. Ethan turned toward Harper, voice sharp. "How do you know all this?" Harper hesitated. "Because Logan asked me to help him hide the documents. He said it was temporary, that once Grace handed over the assets, everything would balance out. But he was panicking. He made copies of everything. He even kept a binder with all the forged paperwork." Ethan stiffened. "Where is that binder?" I don't know," Harper whispered. "He keeps it with him now, like some twisted safety net." Grace pressed a shaking hand to her forehead. "So there's evidence out there, with my name on crimes I didn't commit." Harper nodded miserably. "Yes, and if the lenders go to the police, they'll come after you first, not him." A tremor ran through Grace's body. Her baby kicked sharply in response, as if reacting to the rising panic inside her. Ethan rose to his feet abruptly. "All right, enough." His voice was low, controlled, the voice of a man who had already made a decision. "Grace, we're not waiting for Logan to act. I'm calling someone." "Who?" Grace asked. "My brother," Ethan replied. "He works for the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit." Harper's eyes widened. "You have an FBI contact?" Ethan's gaze hardened. Logan chose the wrong woman to destroy. Grace felt her breath catch, not from fear this time, but from the first signs of something stronger, the beginning of her justice. Logan Mercer had always been reckless, but desperation had sharpened him into something far more dangerous. As the storm clouds swallowed the Seattle skyline, he paced outside the Ritz-Carlton, hood pulled low, binder clutched in one hand like a lifeline. Inside that binder were the forged documents, the proof of every crime he had pinned to Grace's name. And tonight, he planned to use them. Inside the suite upstairs, Grace sat curled on the couch, hands wrapped around a warm cup of tea she couldn't bring herself to drink. Ethan stood near the window, phone pressed to his ear as he spoke quietly with his brother, Agent Ryan Cole of the FBI. Grace watched him, her heart nodding with gratitude and fear all at once. "Is he really coming?" she whispered. Ethan nodded. "He'll be here in 10 minutes. Grace, once he sees the evidence, Logan won't be able to touch you." Harper paced in the corner, still trembling. "You don't understand. Logan is beyond rational now. He said he'd fix everything, no matter who he had to take down." Grace's breath faltered. "He wouldn't hurt me, not physically." Harper looked at her with haunted eyes. "Grace, you didn't see him after you left." Before Grace could respond, a loud crash echoed in the hallway. Ethan reacted instantly. "Both of you, behind me, now." Grace's pulse hammered. She held her belly protectively, stepping back as the doorknob shook violently. "Grace!" Logan's voice thundered from the other side. "Open this damn door!" Harper covered her mouth to stifle a sob. Ethan pulled Grace farther behind him, his stance unyielding. The pounding grew harder, more unhinged. "You ruined everything!" Logan roared. "You think you can walk away? You think you can leave me with nothing?" Ethan raised his voice, calm but firm. "Logan, step away from the door. Law enforcement is on the way." That only fueled Logan's rage. "She's my wife. She owes me. I'll make her fix this." But before he could ram the door again, 3 sharp knocks cut through the chaos. "FBI, step away from the door." Logan froze. Ethan exhaled. Harper collapsed onto the couch in relief, and Grace, shaking but standing tall, realized something profound. For the first time since her nightmare began, Logan wasn't in control. He was trapped, cornered, hunted by the very consequences he once believed he was too clever to face. Grace Holloway had dreamed of the moment she would meet her child. Soft lights, calm breathing, a quiet room filled with hope. She never imagined it would begin with FBI agents handcuffing her husband outside a luxury hotel suite. Yet as the agents escorted Logan away, shouting accusations and broken pride trailing behind him, Grace felt the first deep breath she'd taken in months settle into her chest. But the relief lasted only seconds. A sharp pain struck low across her abdomen. Grace gripped the arm of the couch. "Ethan, something's wrong." Ethan turned instantly, all medical precision. "Where does it hurt?" Another contraction ripped through her, stealing the air from her lungs. It's too early." Her breathing hitched. Panic rose fast. "Harper," Ethan said sharply. "Call the front desk and tell them we need emergency transport. Now." Harper scrambled for the phone, hands shaking but determined. "Yes, hello. We need an ambulance immediately. A pregnant woman is in labor." Grace clutched her belly as the next wave came. Ethan crouched beside her, his voice steady, grounding. "Grace, look at me. You're going to be okay, I promise." Tears blurred her vision. "It's too soon. It's too soon." "You're not alone this time," he murmured. "I'm right here." Within minutes, paramedics rushed into the suite. They lifted Grace onto a stretcher, and Ethan stayed right beside her, refusing to let go of her hand as they hurried through the lobby. Rain streaked across the ambulance windows as Seattle blurred by. Grace tried to focus on her breathing, but fear clawed at her chest. "What if the baby?" "The baby will be fine," Ethan said firmly. "You've done everything right. Stress triggered early labor, but we'll manage it." Those words, "we'll manage it," wrapped around her like a shield. At the hospital, bright lights and urgent voices filled the room. Nurses moved quickly, preparing monitors, checking vitals. Grace's heart raced, contractions closer now. Ethan stayed at her side, whispering calm into the chaos. "You're not doing this alone, Grace. Not anymore." She squeezed his hand, tears slipping down her cheeks. Not from fear this time, but from the overwhelming realization that someone was finally standing with her. And as another contraction tore through her, one truth rose above all the pain. Her child was coming into the world at the exact moment she was reclaiming her own. The hospital room settled into a quiet hum once Grace was stabilized. The contractions had slowed. The doctors managed to stall the premature labor. Grace lay exhausted but safe, her hand resting protectively over her belly, while monitors beeped steadily beside her. Ethan stood near the foot of the bed, shoulders relaxing now that the immediate danger had passed. He had changed into scrubs, still wearing his hospital ID, expression soft but alert, a man ready to protect her from anything, even exhaustion. Then came the knock, a firm, authoritative knock. Ethan turned first. Grace followed, heart tightening. Agent Ryan Cole stepped into the room, his FBI badge clipped to his belt, rain still dripping from his jacket. His expression was serious, but not unkind. He nodded at his brother before looking to Grace. "We have him in custody," Ryan said. "Logan Mercer is being charged with fraud, identity falsification, and financial coercion. His forged documents won't touch you. We've already secured proof of your innocence." Grace exhaled shakily. Relief slid through her like warm water. "So, it's over?" "Legally, yes," Ryan replied, "but he asked to speak with you." Grace's heart lurched. The baby shifted, responding to her spike of emotion. Ethan's expression hardened. "She's not talking to him," he said flatly. But Grace lifted her hand. "No, I need to hear what he wants. I need to close this." Ryan stepped aside, and two officers escorted Logan into the room, wrists cuffed, face bruised from the arrest. His eyes darted immediately to Grace, wide, frantic, pleading. "Grace," he choked out, voice cracking, "you have to help me. They're twisting everything. You know I didn't mean—" "I almost gave birth tonight because of your choices," she said quietly, cutting him off. "You forged my name. You endangered our child. You left me with nothing but fear." Logan shook his head rapidly. "No, Harper twisted things. She made me—" "Stop," Grace whispered. "You made every choice that brought you here." Something inside Logan crumbled then. The entitlement, the arrogance, the delusion. He sagged between the officers, defeated. Grace looked away first, not because she couldn't stand to see him suffer, but because she finally realized his suffering no longer belonged to her. "Take him," Ryan said softly. As Logan was escorted out, Ethan moved beside Grace, his hand resting gently over hers. "It's over," he murmured. Grace closed her eyes, letting the weight lift. For the first time in years, she felt completely, entirely free. The days after Logan's arrest unfolded with a surreal calm Grace Holloway had never experienced before. She remained in the hospital for monitoring, her early labor stabilized, her baby's heartbeat strong and steady. For the first time in months, she slept without fear of the next crisis, without waking to panic, without feeling the shadow of someone else's chaos pressing against her lungs. Instead, the world seemed to open gently for her. On the morning of the third day, Grace sat near the window, watching Seattle's skyline brighten through a soft mist. Ethan entered quietly, holding 2 cups, chamomile tea for her, black coffee for himself. "You look lighter today," he said, handing her the tea. "I feel lighter," Grace admitted. "I didn't realize how heavy everything had become until it wasn't crushing me anymore." Ethan took the seat beside her. "Ryan called. They traced every loan Logan forged. All of it is being purged from your record. You'll be completely cleared." Grace let out a shaky exhale. "Thank God. I was terrified the company would suffer." Ethan smiled faintly. "Grace, your company is going to thrive. You're brilliant, and now you're free." A nurse poked her head into the room, handing Grace a thick envelope. "These came for you from your corporate office." Inside was a formal letter. Holloway Financial Consulting had been officially approved to partner with a major tech firm. A contract, worth more than Grace had ever imagined, sat beneath it. Her throat tightened. I didn't think they'd take the chance on me." "They didn't take a chance," Ethan said gently. "They made the smart choice." Before Grace could respond, her phone chimed. A news alert. "Logan Mercer faces multiple federal charges. Bail denied. Associates speak out about years of fraud." She stared at the headline, not with satisfaction, but with a profound sense of closure. Logan's downfall was no longer hers to carry. His consequences were finally, irrevocably his. Ethan watched her carefully. "How do you feel?" Grace rested a hand over her belly. "Safe," she whispered, "for the first time, truly safe." And as she looked back at the skyline, the city waiting for her rebuilt life, Grace realized something even deeper. She hadn't just survived her past. She had stepped into a future she finally deserved. The morning sunlight streamed softly into Grace Holloway's hospital room, catching dust particles in golden suspension, the kind of gentle, forgiving light that seemed to promise a new beginning. She sat propped against her pillows, one hand resting over her belly, the other holding a copy of her newly signed business contract. Everything once broken inside her felt, for the first time, like it was stitching back together. A quiet knock sounded at the door. Ethan stepped in, carrying a small vase of fresh white lilies. "These are for you," he said, setting them beside her bed. "A symbol of new beginnings, apparently." Grace smiled, a real, unburdened smile. "They're beautiful." "So are you," he said softly. She looked down, cheeks warming. Compliments had always felt like apologies from Logan. Insincere, transactional. But from Ethan, they felt safe, earnest, like sunlight reaching spaces that had been dark too long. "Ryan called," Ethan added. "Logan officially pled guilty. No trial, no chance of appeal. He's going away for a long time." Grace inhaled deeply, letting the news settle. There was no triumph in her heart, only release. "Then it's truly over." "It is," Ethan said. "You and your child are protected, completely." A small kick thumped beneath her palm, as if the baby were agreeing. Grace let out a soft laugh. "Looks like someone approves." Ethan's expression warmed. "Grace, you've been through hell and rebuilt yourself anyway. That kind of strength, it's rare." She met his eyes, those steady, gentle eyes that had never once looked at her with disappointment or entitlement. "I didn't rebuild alone," she said quietly. He stepped closer, taking her hand with a careful reverence. "I'm not asking for anything today. You've already had to make too many decisions too quickly. But when you're ready, I'd like to be part of your life, yours and your child's." Grace felt her throat tighten, not with grief this time, but with gratitude, hope, a future she never believed she deserved. "Ethan," she whispered, "I think, someday, I could say yes." He smiled, soft, patient, full of promise. Outside the window, Seattle glowed under the rising sun. Grace leaned back, letting her eyes close, her hand still held in his. Her story had begun in betrayal, but it would end in healing. And the life ahead, rebuilt with love, strength, and peace, was finally hers. So, that's the end of our story. And if you're still here right now, my friend, it means something in this journey touched your heart in a way only real life can. Grace's path reminds us of a truth Marcus Aurelius once wrote. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Real strength comes from within. She didn't win because life was kind. She won because she chose courage when fear tried to break her, and peace when chaos tried to claim her. Maybe you're facing your own storms. Maybe you've carried more than anyone knows. But Grace's story teaches us this. You are allowed to walk away from what hurts you. You are allowed to rebuild. And you are worthy of a life where you feel safe, valued, and loved. If this journey made you feel understood, even for a moment, stay a little longer with us. Like this video if it spoke to you, share it with someone who might need it, and subscribe so you don't walk through stories or life alone. We're right here with you, always. This story is a work of fiction, created solely for entertainment and emotional reflection. While the events, characters, and names feel real, they are entirely imagined and not based on any actual individuals or real-life incidents. The situations in the narrative are dramatized to explore universal themes such as resilience, self-worth, healing, and personal growth. Any resemblance to real persons, living or dead, is purely coincidental. Our goal is to provide meaningful storytelling that resonates deeply with viewers, while remaining respectful, safe, and responsible in the way sensitive topics are portrayed. Please remember that this narrative should not be interpreted as factual reporting or real-life evidence. It is simply a story, crafted with care, meant to inspire, comfort, and remind us that strength often rises from the hardest moments.